as we all know, China has uncompromising interests to maintain stability of North Korea, and we've seen that to the extent that China is willing to go to stabilize North Korea. I mean, just even recently with these last few weeks, even after the rocket launch and so forth, and China signing on to the chairman's letter, we just saw on Monday that President Hu Jintao came out with a statement bolstering the friendship of China and North Korea ties and supporting the Kim Jong-un regime. And it's understandable why these interests are intransigent, because there are 2 points. One is, of course, maintaining stability in North Korea is very critical to maintaining stability in China. We all know the arguments that if North Korea implodes, then all the humanitarian disasters, the potential spillover, could all impact China, Northeast China.
I think part of the complexity we can see is in the relationship that both Koreas have with China. China being the #1 trading partner for both South Korea and North Korea, and then North Korea having a treaty, some sort of a treaty alliance with China, and South Korea trying to have a strategic partnership with China. And so these 2 economic and strategic relationships that both countries are trying to have with China and how they go forward with these issues. And so even with these connections, there are uncertainties of what these relationships really mean for the countries involved and how the connections will actually work to create better peace, stability, and actually some economic growth, continued economic growth in Asia. And lastly, all these factors are intensified with the leadership changes in all 3 countries this year. So it's right that Asan has picked leadership as the topic and theme, as it, as I said, intensifies some of the issues that we have to talk about today.
To implement Beijing Sunshine Policy, it looks like the Chinese have developed, or at least these characteristics have come to fruition in the process of implementing this Beijing Sunshine Policy. The first is that if you look at it, Beijing Sunshine Policy is much brighter inside of North Korea than South Korea's Sunshine Policy was. As I mentioned before, these industrial complexes that South Korea started are fenced in and tightly sealed. Whereas if you look at the totality of the border region and the mineral resource sector and the border area, you see a lot of active Chinese investment and things that were speculated, but now if you have access to Google Earth, you can actually see the development and the extraction of resources, transportation infrastructure, and the like. The second is that if you look at the other aspect, Beijing Sunshine Policy shines both ways, inside of North Korea, but also on the mainland. Increasingly, North Korean state trading companies are setting up operations inside of China. The unintended consequence of this phenomenal economic success story in China is that foreign companies are coming to China not to import, to bring their goods to sell to the Chinese market, but to set up factories. And they're setting up factories to produce products to the same specifications in their home markets for the Chinese market. And so with that, if you look at some of the industrial equipment and other things that might be even categorized as dual-use technology, North Korean state trading companies merely have to go across the border, do deals with private Chinese companies, and as a result, their procurement and sales networks are becoming that much more durable and quite strong. The third part, this characteristic, as I mentioned, the party-to-party institution building, and the recognition that as much as the Communist Party of China is encouraging North Korea to do economic reform, the recognition that the institutions aren't there in North Korea, and that for North Korea to be in that position to carry out Chinese-style economic reform, the institution building being a critical capacity-building activity. The fourth characteristic is that there's no direct linkage between this type of commercial activity between China and North Korea with denuclearization. As I'll explain in the implication section, that is in a separate second track for the Chinese, and that's through the six-party talks, which frankly have been, in many respects, de-emphasized because of this Chinese priority on stability of the regime and doing a lot of the institution building between the two parties. And the fifth characteristic is that there's no time limit. There will be no voting out of the Communist Party of China, as there were in other capitals, and as we saw changes in terms of these different countries' approaches to dealing with North Korea.
In the history, we are in the same allies. But after 1992, we decide to make a foreign diplomacy relation with South Korea. After that, the relation between China and North Korea, or something changed. And so nowadays, it's very hard for China to push to give some advice or to persuade the North part to change his ideas, especially something related to the North part core issue or core interest. So I think for the North part, only make his own decision based on his own interest. Now, sometimes also they don't concern about what the feeling of China. So you see, China is very hard to. But nowadays I see, for example, the satellite launching from U.S. side, for the South Korea side, said China should push more hard to North Korea. And if we both, all of us put more hard to North Korea, they may be stopped. I don't think so. And also, as I know, China made a very clear point to the North Korea, and also we negotiated with North Korea with different ways, but we're not working. That's why the UN passed a solution for the satellite launching.
The Chinese trilateral or multilateral mechanisms of their Korean policymaking process. For example, when we talk about North Korean refugee issues, South Korean society, they just talk to China and they ask Chinese government, don't their refugees send back to North Korea. They just see only China. But from the China's standpoint, they have to deal with these issues concerning with North Korea, of course, and even Vietnam, and even Chinese Xinjiang area. That's why Chinese people always think it when they found on issues with the Korean Peninsula, usually they have to deal with other factors in the neighboring countries.